She stopped me at the door and said, "If you want to leave, prove it." That's when I realized walking away wouldn't be so easy. The evening had been unhurried, the kind of night where conversations stretched long after the plates were cleared. Laughter still echoed faintly in the living room, where the remains of dinner sat half-forgotten, wine glasses leaving faint rings on the table. I had told myself it was time to go more than once, but somehow I lingered. Maybe it was the way the light spilled so softly across her living room. Or maybe it was the way her voice carried warmth even when she wasn't speaking directly to me. When I finally rose and walked toward the door, it was with the familiar reluctance of someone trying not to admit why. My hand reached for the knob, but before I could twist it, her voice came, calm, almost playful, yet edged with something I couldn't name. "If you want to leave," she said, her words measured and deliberate, "you'll have to prove it." I froze. The brass doorknob was cool under my palm, and the hallway ahead felt like a path I wasn't sure I wanted to take. Slowly, I turned to face her. She stood just a few feet away, one hand resting casually against the doorframe. Her posture was unhurried, but her eyes, steady, unwavering, pinned me in place. I tried to laugh, to treat it like a joke, but the sound caught in my throat. There was no sharpness in her expression, no harsh demand, only quiet certainty, as though she already knew what I hadn't yet admitted. The hallway light poured down from above, drawing a soft glow across her features. The faintest smile curved her lips, but it wasn't mocking. It was knowing, like she had seen through me hours ago. The faint scent of her perfume reached me, a subtle blend of something floral and warm, grounding me even as my thoughts scattered. "You'll have to prove it," she repeated, her tone gentler this time. I could feel my pulse quicken, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. It was as if the air between us thickened, charged with something unspoken. My hand hovered still on the knob, but I couldn't turn it. I told myself I could leave at any time, that nothing was stopping me. Yet everything in her gaze said otherwise. Her body language was calm, controlled. She leaned slightly against the frame, her shoulders relaxed, but the way she tilted her head made it clear she was watching closely. Not to corner me, but to see if I would face what lingered between us or run from it. For the first time all evening, I felt the line between courtesy and longing blur. I had come here as a guest. I stood now as something else, a man at the threshold of choice he didn't fully understand. And though I didn't move, though I didn't speak, I already knew the truth. I wasn't ready to walk away. Her words still lingered in the air, and I found myself trapped in their quiet gravity. My hand rested against the doorknob as if the simple turn of my wrist could free me, but it was useless. The door wasn't locked, I was. She leaned back slightly against the wall, arms folding loosely across her chest. There was no urgency in her movements, no push to keep me there. Instead, she radiated a calm patience, as though she knew I was already caught long before I realized it myself. The faintest smile tugged at her lips, playful yet not careless. She wasn't mocking me. She was studying me, watching, waiting. Her gaze carried weight, and the longer it lingered, the harder it became to hold my composure. I forced myself to look at the door again, but my body betrayed me. My fingers hovered on the cool brass knob, yet I couldn't turn it. Every instinct told me that leaving was the polite, logical choice. But logic has no place in a moment charged with the pull of unspoken desire. She chuckled softly, the sound low and warm, breaking the silence that had stretched thin between us. That laugh disarmed me in a way nothing else could. It was too genuine, too human, to let me retreat into excuses. "Go ahead," she said, tilting her head slightly toward the door. "If you really want to." The way she said it left no doubt. She already knew the answer. I swallowed, searching for words, but all I managed was a faint shake of my head, more to myself than to her. She shifted, closing the small space between us in the most subtle way. The brush of her shoulder against my arm felt like lightning disguised as a whisper. I tensed, not from discomfort, but from a way such a small touch could undo me. Her perfume drifted again, delicate but commanding, a reminder of her presence that filled every inch of space around me. My pulse quickened, thudding so hard I was certain she could feel it radiating from me. Still, she didn't press. She simply leaned there, casual yet unyielding, as though time itself had slowed for her amusement. I realized then that she wasn't holding me captive. She was giving me a choice, one I'd already made but was too afraid to admit. The silence between us was not empty. It was full of tension, of possibility, of every unsaid word that hung heavy in the room. My breath came shallow, my chest tightening with the effort of pretending I could leave. I felt like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, pretending he didn't want to fall. And all the while, her eyes held mine, steady and calm, not daring me, not taunting me, simply waiting for me to stop resisting myself. The silence between us deepened until it felt alive, pressing softly against my chest. I had no excuse left to reach for, no polite gesture that could disguise the truth. She hadn't asked me to stay. She hadn't begged, pleaded, or reasoned. Instead, she had stepped closer, her presence filling the space between us with something far stronger than words. I could feel it, the shift in the air when she moved. She didn't crowd me, not exactly. She simply let the warmth of her nearness speak for her. My breath stilled. Even before I looked, I knew she was close enough that if I turned slightly, the edge of my sleeve would brush hers. When I finally dared to lift my gaze, I found her watching me with that same quiet patience, her head tilted just enough to show she was studying me. Not searching for weakness, but for honesty. Her eyes, softened by the low light spilling from the hall lamp, seemed to hold a question I was afraid to answer. For a moment, I thought about saying something light, something that could dissolve the tension. A joke, perhaps, or an excuse to break the weight of her silence. But my voice betrayed me. No sound came. She didn't move away. She stayed there, steady, close enough that I could feel the subtle heat radiating from her. My pulse pounded in my ears, a steady rhythm that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet. Then her hand lifted, slow, deliberate, unhurried. She didn't reach for me directly. Instead, her fingers brushed the inside of my wrist, feather-light, almost questioning. The contact was barely there, yet it sent a current racing through me, burning hotter than any embrace could have. My throat tightened, my body caught between the instinct to pull back and the desperate urge to lean closer. Her touch lingered only a heartbeat before retreating, but it was enough. Enough to leave me unsteady, enough to undo every wall I had tried to keep standing. I wanted to speak, to tell her what she was doing to me, how impossible she was making it to leave, but my words felt too clumsy, too small. So instead, I stayed frozen, my hands still suspended near the door, my heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. She took a slow breath, and I caught it. The rise of her shoulders, the faint parting of her lips. She wasn't demanding, wasn't pushing. She was waiting, testing not whether I could leave, but whether I could be honest enough to admit I didn't want to. The lamp above hummed faintly, the only sound in the room besides our breaths. And in that stillness, with her presence so close it felt woven into mine, I realized this wasn't a game at all. It was an invitation, one that required no words, only courage. Her touch had been fleeting, but its echo stayed with me, buzzing in my veins like a quiet flame I couldn't put out. I stood there, trapped in the gravity of her presence, pretending I still had the option to turn the knob and leave. The truth pressed harder against my chest with every second of silence. I didn't want to go, but admitting that felt like stepping into dangerous territory. Finally, I exhaled, shaky, unsteady, the kind of breath that carried a confession I hadn't spoken yet. "It's not that I don't want to stay," I said quietly, surprising myself. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, thin but loaded. "It's just, I don't know if I should." Her eyes softened at once. That playful calm she had held earlier dissolved, and for the first time, I saw something fragile flicker through her expression. She leaned a little closer, though not enough to close the distance entirely, as if careful not to push me further into retreat. "Why?" she asked. The word wasn't sharp, not even demanding. It was gentle, laced with curiosity, almost as if she wanted to carry the burden of my hesitation with me. I swallowed, because of how it looks, because of what people would think, because my words trailed off, and I pressed my palm flat against the door, grounding myself. Because I've never felt like this before, and it terrifies me. Her lips parted slightly, and her gaze fell for a moment, not in shame, but in recognition. She drew a slow breath, then stepped just close enough that the warmth of her body brushed the edge of mine. "You think I'm not afraid?" she whispered. Her voice cracked just slightly on the word afraid, and it unraveled something inside me. She shook her head softly, as if to herself, and when her eyes lifted back to mine, I saw it, the vulnerability she had kept tucked behind her strength. "I've kept people at a distance for years," she admitted. "It's easier to be admired from afar, to be thought of as confident, untouchable, than to let someone in close enough to see how uncertain I really am." Her words fell into the space between us like stones sinking into water, rippling outward until they reached me. And suddenly, she didn't seem like the composed woman who had teased me at the door. She seemed human, quietly, achingly human. Without thinking, my hand drifted from the door. I didn't touch her, not yet, but my arm relaxed at my side, a silent surrender. "I thought I was the only one," I whispered. Her eyes searched mine, and for a fleeting second, her fingers brushed against my forearm again. Not playful this time, not testing. Just a gentle, almost trembling touch that felt less like a challenge and more like a plea. And in that fragile, unguarded moment, I understood. The real risk wasn't staying. The real risk was leaving and never feeling this again. Her words lingered in me like a tide I couldn't resist, each confession pulling me closer to the shore of something I'd been afraid to touch. I stood there, suspended between escape and surrender, my hand still brushing the cool brass of the doorknob, as if clinging to the illusion of choice. I told myself I could still leave, that if I only twisted the knob, opened the door, and stepped into the cool night air, this ache in my chest would loosen. But I knew better. The door wasn't keeping me here. She was, and not by force, but by the truth that leaving her behind felt unbearable. I shifted slightly, testing my resolve, and in that moment her hand moved. Slow, intentional. She reached across the thin distance and found mine where it hovered near the knob. Her touch was steady, not forceful, just enough to still me. Her palm pressed against the back of my hand, guiding it gently away from the door until it rested between us. The warmth of her skin seeped into mine, grounding me, undoing every argument I tried to build in my head. I looked down at her hand, then back up at her, and the quiet certainty in her expression unraveled what little resistance I had left. "Stay," she whispered. Just one word, but it carried the weight of every unsaid thought between us. My chest tightened. I wanted to answer, but no words would come. Instead, I felt my heartbeat hammering in my ears, pulsing against my ribs so hard it hurt. She must have felt it too, because her gaze softened even more, her thumb brushing across the back of my knuckles with a tenderness that almost undid me. I tried again to step back toward the door, not out of true desire to leave, but from the fear of how much this moment was unraveling me. Yet she caught me again, this time more firmly, and drew my hand to her chest. The contact startled me, not because it was bold, but because of what I felt there, the steady rhythm of her heart beneath my fingertips. It was softer than I expected, quiet but real, and for a moment, the thundering of my own pulse seemed to merge with hers, two different beats finding the same fragile rhythm. My breath caught, shallow and uneven. I couldn't tear my eyes from hers. She wasn't daring me anymore. She wasn't testing me. She was showing me something far more dangerous, that she was just as vulnerable as I was. Time seemed to stretch, the silence thick and unbroken except for the faint hum of the lamp above us. Her hand lingered on mine for one last second before she let go, but the imprint of her touch burned into me. And in that moment, I understood this wasn't about whether I could leave. It was about whether I had the strength to walk away from the only place I wanted to be. The silence after she let go was almost unbearable. My hand hovered in the empty space where hers had been, tingling as if her touch still clung to my skin. I should have turned the knob, stepped into the night, and spared us both the weight of what lingered between us. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I stood there, my chest rising and falling too quickly, eyes fixed on her as though every answer I was searching for might be written in her face. She wasn't smiling anymore. The playful teasing that had colored her challenge at the door was gone. In its place was something softer, quieter, a look that felt like both invitation and fear. "I don't want to go," I admitted at last, my voice unsteady but true. The words slipped out before I could stop them, and once they were free, there was no taking them back. Her lips parted slightly, a faint tremor crossing them, but she said nothing. Instead, she stepped toward me, erasing what little space remained. The warmth of her presence wrapped around me like a tide I couldn't resist. I felt her pause, just inches away, giving me time, a silent chance to step back if I chose. But I didn't move. I couldn't. My body stayed rooted, every muscle tense with anticipation. Then, slowly, she leaned in. Not to kiss me, not to claim me, but to let her cheek brush lightly against mine. The touch was fleeting, yet overwhelming, a whisper of skin against skin that sent my breath spiraling. The softness of her hair brushed my jaw, strands catching against the stubble on my face, and the simple contact left me dizzy. Her breath lingered near my ear, warm and trembling, and for a moment I felt the faintest shiver run through her. She wasn't unshakable, wasn't untouchable. She was here, fragile and human, just like me. I closed my eyes, letting the moment wash over me. My hand lifted almost on its own, resting gently against her back. The fabric of her blouse was smooth beneath my palm, but what struck me most was the subtle rise and fall of her breathing. She didn't pull away. She leaned into it, allowing the weight of her body to rest just slightly against mine, as though she'd been waiting years for someone to hold her like this. No words passed between us. None were needed. The quiet spoke louder than anything we could have said. When she finally drew back, it wasn't far. Just enough to look at me, her eyes searching mine with a question that didn't need to be spoken. I answered it with the only thing I had, staying right where I was, refusing to let the space widen again. And in that fragile closeness, with her cheeks still warm against mine and my heart thundering against my ribs, I realized the truth. Surrender didn't feel like losing. It felt like finally coming home. When she finally pulled back, the room didn't feel the same. Something had shifted, not broken, not rushed, but quietly realigned, as though all the unspoken tension of the night had settled into a new shape. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was warm, filled with the comfort of knowing we'd crossed a threshold neither of us could undo. I let my hand fall gently back to my side, but the warmth of her lingered against my skin. She studied me for a long moment, her eyes carrying both relief and the faintest trace of uncertainty, as though she was still waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't move toward the door. I didn't even glance at it. Instead, I found myself following her as she turned slowly, guiding me back into the living room. We walked without hurry. The soft glow of the lamp on the side table cast golden light across the space, painting everything in quiet intimacy. She motioned for me to sit, and I sank into the couch, the cushion dipping slightly as she lowered herself beside me. The space between us was almost non-existent, our shoulders brushing lightly, a touch so simple, yet it anchored me more firmly than anything else had all night. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She reached for the half-finished bottle of wine on the table, pouring 2 glasses with steady hands. The sound of the liquid filling the glass was strangely soothing, a reminder that life was still simple, even when our hearts felt anything but. When she handed me a glass, her fingers brushed mine, lingering longer than necessary. The contact was small, ordinary, yet charged with meaning. "Thank you," I murmured, my voice quieter than I intended. Her smile in response wasn't broad, wasn't playful. It was soft, a curve of her lips that carried both contentment and something deeper, almost like gratitude. She leaned back, cradling her glass in her hands, and for a moment she simply looked at me, not as if she was trying to read me, but as though she was memorizing me. I took a sip, the wine rich and warming, and let myself breathe. The fear that had once clawed at me was gone, replaced by a calm I hadn't known I needed. Sitting there with her, close enough to feel the heat of her body, I no longer thought about who might judge, what rules we might be breaking, or what tomorrow could bring. The world outside her walls felt far away, irrelevant. She set her glass down, then shifted just slightly closer, enough that her arm rested against mine. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The steadiness of her presence told me everything. That she wasn't asking for promises, only honesty, the honesty of staying. I let my head rest lightly against the back of the couch, a quiet exhale slipping past my lips. And in that unremarkable yet perfect moment, I realized the night didn't need fireworks or declarations. It only needed this: two people sitting close, hearts finally at peace, the warmth between us steady and real.